Shalom, family, and welcome back to The Fire and the Vision. I'm your host, The Watcher. Today's episode is titled, The Voice of Jacob, but the Hands of Esau. This is a conversation about covenant, history, identity, power, deception, and restoration. And family, let's say this up front. This discussion may turn into a multi-part episode depending on the time because the subject matter runs deep and we refuse to treat sacred things lightly. I'm joined in the studio by my co-host, The Flame, and today we also welcome a very special guest, The Wisdom, who has flown in to be with us. Flame, I'll let you introduce our sister.
Thank you, Watcher. Family, today's guest is not just a colleague, she is my sister in purpose. We've been close since college, diving deep into history and cultural truths long before wokeness became a trend. Our focus has always been on the substance, not the slogan. Born in Africa, Wisdom was 11 when she and her family fled civil war for London, England. It was there she grew up, gaining the British accent she carries today, but not losing her native tongue or roots. When she turned 18, she came to America to study journalism and African studies. Once we graduated, she felt the call of Africa and returned to help her post-war nation recover. She now works as a journalist for a major newspaper in one of Africa's largest cities. Her work focuses on tribal origin stories, historical memory, and reconnecting Africans with their relatives taken during what we rightly call the transatlantic slave war. She and I exchange what we call boots-on-the-ground knowledge, not Western mainstream narratives, but what people are living, seeing, and remembering on both sides of the Atlantic. Family, help me welcome the Wisdom.
Thank you, Flame. First, I want to give thanks in Swahili to Mungu, or God in English, and his son Yesu, or Jesus, for bringing me safely across the Atlantic Ocean, and I greet you both with Amani, or peace. What we're discussing today isn't theory, it's lived history. Across Alkebulan, or Africa, we are rediscovering how deeply connected our stories are to the peoples scattered across the world. When Scripture speaks of the sand of the seashore in Genesis 22, verse 17, we see that promise unfold in real time.
Let's begin at the foundation. In Genesis 27, verse 22, Isaac says, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." This is more than a moment of deception. This becomes a prophetic pattern. Jacob represents covenant identity. Esau represents power by the sword. Flame, break this down for us.
Jacob and Esau were twins, born of the same parents according to Genesis 25, verses 24 to 26. Both were Shemitic and described as reddish-brown in appearance, with Esau being hairy and Jacob being smooth. Genesis 25, verse 25, and Genesis 27, verse 11. Scripture doesn't make skin color the issue. The difference was orientation, not appearance. Esau despised the birthright. Genesis 25, verse 34. Jacob valued the covenant. Esau lived by the sword. Genesis 27, verse 40. Jacob lived by promise. So when we say the hands of Esau, we are talking about methods, domination, force, survival without covenant. And when Jacob wears Esau's garment, even temporarily, it shows what happens when covenant people survive inside systems built on Esau's power.
Wisdom, from your research, how does this pattern show up historically on the continent?
Scripture shows that Esau becomes Edom, and Edom's defining trait is perpetual enmity with Jacob's descendants. Obadiah 1, verse 10 says, "For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever." Edom is condemned not for skin color, but for how he treated Jacob during times of vulnerability. Throughout history, we see a recurring cycle. The descendants of Jacob, the Bantu tribes, scattered, mocked, and oppressed, while those linked to Edom stand with the oppressor. Both my family's oral tradition and my historical research reveal that Bantu peoples were the primary targets of the Trans-Saharan, Indian Ocean, and transatlantic slave trades. Interestingly, Many of the groups who facilitated this captivity share similar migration stories, tracing their roots back to the Middle East, formerly Northeast Africa. Following the rise of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula, these groups formed expansionist empires, turning toward a legacy of conquest and the subjugation of their neighbors' land and liberty.
Family, I told you this was going to be intense. We're hitting pause right here to let that sink in. But the second half of this episode is coming your way in our next broadcast. You won't want to miss it.
Stay lit, family. The second part of this episode is coming up next. My sis is on fire.
May Yesu continue to be lifted up and I be decreased. Amani, everyone.